Welcome to Attic Raiders Retro Reviews, where today we're going to be taking our chances on the high seas and hope that we don't have to send out an SOS. S.O.S. was released in 1990 by Educa, a Spanish company that was targeting the European market, with all of the text and instructions printed in German, Italian, French and English. Educa was a company which specialised in educational games, and this is a 2 to 4 player game for ages 4 to 8. In it, you have to move around these towers across the gangplanks, trying to avoid falling in and being eaten by the shark, which is a really great concept for a game that hooks you in and drives your imagination. And the box art for this is really nice. I love the comic book style painted artwork with its bold colours, bright highlights and shadows. There's a real sense of action and movement with the precariously balanced children, the splashing water and the jumping sharks. The title, S.O.S, stands for Save Our Souls, which was a signal which was broadcast by ships when they were in emergency situations, which, with this nautical theme and the sharks, really does go well. To see what the game's actually like, we need to look at the back, where we've got this large black and white photo. And straight away, you can see that it's got a 3-dimensional board. So with that 3D element and the sharks as a concept, this is one that really hooked me in and wanted me to find out more about it. So when I got this and started playing it, did it turn out to be a good game? Well, let's take a closer look and find out. The game comes with 16 playing pawns, 4 yellow, 4 red, 4 green and 4 blue. And you can see these have been cheaply produced in plastic with the seam lines and bits of the actual moulded sprue still attached to them. There are 7 gangplanks, 3 with lifebelt symbols on them and 4 without. And these are printed cardboard which has been glued onto actual strips of wood here. There are 6 white plastic towers. These have been vac formed from thin plastic, but unlike other vac formed plastic that I've seen, this plastic is actually really quite thick, and given the ridge structure on here, these do not seem like they're going to crack or break anytime soon. We've got a black plastic vac formed shark fin, custom 6-sided wooden die which has got the numbers 1 to 4 on it, a star symbol and a symbol for the shark. And we've got this half-fold cardboard game board here which represents the ocean or the water, and it's got these 6 holes cut into it. To set up the game then, we take our 6 plastic towers and we insert them into the holes in the board, pushing them up from below. Once all the towers have been inserted into the board, then we're going to take our wooden gangplanks and we're going to insert them into these little cutout tabs on the towers here, which is going to hold them nice and still and steady, and they're not going to fall out. Each player is given 4 pawns of the same colour and places one of them on the start tower here. And I know that this is the start tower here because it's the one which has the white arrow pointing to it. And the shark fin can just go anywhere in the water that you like. The object of the game then is to be the first player to get all 4 of your coloured pawns from the start tower here to this end tower here. And I know that it's the end tower because it has this white arrow here pointing off of the board. If you don't manage to get all 4 of your players off the board, then it's the person who gets the most surviving pawns off the board that wins. So to get going, we're going to take the die and roll it, and that's going to tell us how many spaces we can move. So the green can either move 1 space to here or 1 space to there. You can go in any direction you like. Once you've moved a pawn off of the starting tower, then you're going to place another one of your 4 pawns back on there. Once everybody else has had their go, on each of your subsequent goes, if you roll a number, then you've got to move all of your playing pieces which are on the board by that amount. So we could have 1 there, and he can move 1 over here, and then he would also be replaced with the 3rd pawn. If a player rolls a number but they can't actually move into that space because it's already occupied, then they're going to move into the next available space to them. If on your go you roll the shark symbol, then you get to dump as many of the planks as you like into the water. And obviously what you're trying to do here is either cut off a route that one of your opponents is using to get to the finish, or more likely dump their pieces into the water so they get eaten and eliminated. So if this was the red player's roll, then this plank here would end up in the water, and this one here would also end up in the water. However, because this player piece here is on a life belt space, it doesn't go into the water, it's going to move to the nearest tower. These other two though, they are going to end up in the water along with the plank. And the shark then is going to eat one of the players that ends up in the water, the choice being up to the person who rolled that symbol. So let's say that blue gets eaten and this piece is completely now out of the game. If a player rolls the star symbol, then they can rebuild the planks. Now, it doesn't actually say whether you have to rebuild all of the planks or whether you can just choose which planks to rebuild. It just says that they can rebuild the planks again, but it doesn't specify that it has to be all of them. The rolling player will also rescue their pawns from the water, and they will have to go back to the start again and start from the starting tower, which could be a little bit difficult if it's already full, because you can't really get more than 4 on there without it becoming quite precarious. But you can see that this green pawn is still in the water, and once you've rebuilt and rescued, you can then roll again. If on your go you roll to move, so for example the green player getting a 2, which allows you to land onto a life belt space like this here, as well as moving this one over here and replacing this one over here, then because you've got a person on this life belt space, then you can save one of your people from the water and put them back to the start. But again, it's starting to get very, very crowded over here on this tower. If a player rolls and gets their pawn to the finished tower, then that piece is off and safe. However, they also get to take one of their pieces which has been previously eaten by the shark and was out of the game, and that piece goes back to the start tower, ready to start again. After a lot of collapsing gangplanks and chomping sharks, eventually somebody will roll and be able to get all of their pieces onto the end tower, and that player will be the winner. As you can see, S.O.S is a really simple game to learn and play, which is what you would expect for a game that's aimed at ages 4 to 8. The components in it are really quite well made. The towers are a sturdy plastic that's not going to crack or break, and the wooden planks are actually printed onto real wood, giving them that extra thickness and sturdiness that means that they're not going to fold or bend, and it just adds to the overall nice quality of the components. That said, the design of the components is not the best. Aesthetically, they could be a lot nicer. The pawns are just very simple mass-produced fare, whereas if they were actually sculpted to be running children, then that would look so much better. And if the vac-formed shark fin was replaced with an actual little model of a shark, then that would spark the imagination much more, and it would just be more fun. But speaking of the shark fin, it's really not needed here in the game whatsoever. It serves zero purpose, and given that it's so boring looking, I think the manufacturers really should have just left it out. If the game board had had sharks painted onto it with some really nice detailed artwork, just like on the front cover, then that would have done, and it would have looked much better. Some way of denoting the start and the finished tower other than just little arrows pointing to or away from them also would have been much nicer. Though obviously I do get that they were going for multilingual, and so that they didn't want any words printed on the board. But just printing something on the board, some different kind of rocky outcrop that the tower is coming out of, would have worked. And while we're at aesthetics, that brings me on to thinking about narrative. I really like games that have a purpose or a story to them, unless of course it's an abstract strategy game. But this has definitely got a story to it, where the kids are running from tower to tower trying to get to the end while gangplanks are falling and the sharks are trying to eat them. But why? What do these gangplanks have to do with anything? Why are their towers connected together like this? And why are the kids there? Some more thought to an actual story behind this game would have, for me, made this much better. As far as gameplay goes, then I know it's for 4 to 8-year-olds, but this is really not great. And one of the reasons for that is that the rules are quite ambiguous in quite a few areas. So the rules state when a player throws a star, they can rescue all their pawns from the water, rebuild the gangplanks, and throw the die again. But the word can is quite significant in that sentence. Does it mean that if you roll a star, then you have to rescue your pieces and rebuild all of the gangplanks? Or does it mean that if you roll a star, then you can rescue your pieces and you can rebuild the gangplanks? Because if it's only that you can rebuild the gangplanks, then that means that you don't have to. Or possibly that you could rebuild only the ones that you want to. Because in this situation, playing as the blue player, I would want to rescue my pawns and put them back to the start. But when it comes to rebuilding the gangplanks, I wouldn't necessarily want to rebuild all of them. It makes more sense for me as the blue player to only rebuild these 2 gangplanks here, meaning that these 2 pawns have got the ability to get to the end tower here, but it's going to stop the red player, the green player and the yellow player here from moving any further forward before I get these pieces off, meaning that I'm much more likely to get all of my pieces off first. The instructions are also missing information as to the setup, because it doesn't tell you exactly where all the different planks should go, because some of them have got those life belts on them. So where I've put the 3 life belt planks is, to me, where they would logically go. But that doesn't mean that that's actually right, and maybe they could go randomly anywhere each time you set up the game. And looking at the back of the box doesn't help, because this is an old prototype image which doesn't have the life belts on them at all. In fact, each of these planks has got a completely different number of spaces on it. Which brings me to another point. There is only actually 12 spaces between the start and the finish space. Now, the die does only go up to 4 as far as movement goes, but that does mean that you can finish this game very fast. On average, it's only going to take about 6 die rolls for each player to get their piece from the start to the finish. And given that the shark symbol is only on one of the 6 sides of the die, that means that the shark, and therefore the action of the game, happens very, very infrequently. In fact, it's not unheard of, and in fact is quite common, that you can play this whole game 2-player at least, with the shark symbol only coming up about twice in the game, which means that most of the time you're simply rolling and moving pawns. And it's dull. There's not really any choice as to how you move them. There are very limited choices that you can actually make in this game, so the scope to play tactically is very small. That said, there are ways of increasing your chance of winning. For example, if the red player was to roll a 1, given the current game board setup, then they could move each of their pieces 1, 1, and 1 like this. However, tactically that would not be the best way of doing things. The best way of doing things is, when the board gets really crowded like this, to move your last piece first. Because that way, if I move this one space here, it has to go forward into the first unoccupied space, which is here. Which then means that if I move my second last piece forward, it's going to have to go all the way to the end here and off the board winning. And then my third piece is also going to do the same thing here, which, as you'll agree, tactically is a much better move. So overall, this is really quite a mundane game. I can see young children from 4 to 8 may be enjoying this game, but the adults who are going to inevitably have to play with them, then they're not so much going to like it. And as an adult collector of games from my childhood, or just games from the 80s and 90s, this is not one that I'm going to be revisiting anytime soon. I'm glad that I bought it so that I could figure out and see how you actually play it, and that scratched that itch of discovery for me. But now that I know how it plays, it's not one that I would recommend to anybody. If you see this when you're out and about, I would leave it where it is. Well, I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen here today. If you have, please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Is this one that you've ever come across before? It was definitely a new one on me. Or are there any other European games which are not really seen in the US or UK market very much, which you would recommend? We'll be back with more vintage board games next time. So until then, this is Attic Raiders Retro Reviews.